We're on? We are live on council phone. Welcome. Today is Monday, April 11th, 2016. Welcome to Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee. I'm Councilmember Joe Buscaino, Chair. I'm joined by Mr. O'Farrell, Mr. Price, Ms. Martinez, and Mr. Rue. We just returned from an amazing ceremony in honor of legendary, the voice of baseball, Vince Scully, Vince Scully Avenue, Ron, and I just want to take an opportunity to recognize the team, the departments who were instrumental in the naming of Vince Scully Avenue. So appreciate all the work that was done this morning. I know all the local media channels carried our city crews changing out the signage, and it was a proud moment for them, I know personally, as well as for this entire city. I'm also joined by my father today. Thanks, Dad. He was glowing throughout that entire ceremony. And if he gets out of hand, please, sergeants, just remove him, please. No. Thanks, Dad. I love you. Thanks for being here. So with that, if I can direct your attention to the agenda, let's turn to general public comment. Do we have anyone here for general public comment?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, let's then close general public comment. Items that we will consider to take on consent, item 1, 3, 4, and 5. Any members want to hold those items on the desk? Okay, hearing none. Oh yeah, we do have 2. We have cards on 2. Sorry, we have cards on 2, and per Council District 1, we will continue item number 3. Yes, we'll continue item 3. So we'll take on consent without objection 1, 4, and 5. We will continue item 3. And I have cards on item 2, at which point we'll take right now. If you can read that into the record, please.
Item 2, categorical exemption and city engineer report relative to the vacation of a portion of the T-shaped alley westerly of Figueroa Street between Florence Avenue and 73rd Street.
Mr. Yu here? Nope. I don't see him. Welcome.
Dale Williams, Bureau of Engineering.
Is your mic hot? Do we know if his mic's on?
Dale Williams, Bureau of Engineering.
There you go. Thank you so much. So we have BOE here?
Yes. So this is a vacation request for a T-shaped alley just west of Figueroa, south of Florence Avenue. This vacation request actually was originally considered by the City Council, originally conditionally adopted by the City Council in 1987. The petitioner at that time did not follow through with the conditions. However, it's been built over since that time. A replacement alley has been built but not yet dedicated. This particular vacation request would, I guess you could say, correct that situation by legally dedicating the replacement alley and then completing the vacation process for that T-shaped alley.
Very good. Thank you. We held this on the desk for speaker cards. If I can please invite up, is it Addie Jarrett? Addie Jarrett? Miss Jarrett, welcome. Come forward. She'll be followed by Miss McCowan. It's Lula McCowan. Please come forward. You'll have 2 minutes each. And she'll be followed by Carmana Potts. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone.
You'll have 2 minutes
Okay,
each.
I'm here on behalf of my mother and my daughter. My mother owns the property.
I'm sorry, you're Ada?
21. I'm
You're Miss-
Addie.
okay, thank you,
Addie
Al.
Jarrett.
Thank you, Addie.
My
Go
mom,
ahead.
Lula McCowan. And I'm here asking or requesting that the council would just give us a little bit more time to look over the property because there is not an alley entrance there. In 1987, I believe, is when they built a shopping center there. And even the structure that they built is right against my mother's property, right against the wall. it's unsafe. And if you're talking about putting an alley there or closing an alley off there, there's no way for the tenants to get in and out safely. And I think that would be a big problem, a safety issue for the tenants that live in that area. That's all.
Thank you. Ms. McCowan,
Yes.
speak into the mic, please. Thank you.
Yes.
Welcome.
I've been at this address since 1962. My husband and I worked very hard to hold on to this property. And the only, as my daughter said, the only entrance that we have is through the alley. And years ago, they closed off the alley. It was supposed to have gone all the way through. They closed it off, and I didn't complain about that. But it would be a hardship on us if you closed off that alley.
There's no entrance off the Florence. There's no entrance off of the Florence Avenue. You can't even get to the house that's in the back of this property. And there's actually another apartment building. There's other apartment buildings where people actually use that alley to get in and out.
I see.
So it's just not safe and it's not feasible.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Ms. Potts, is it?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome.
Hello. I currently reside at the location at 522 and a 4th West Florence. I am the granddaughter of Mrs. McCowan. The property that we are speaking of, I've submitted pictures. The alleyway that is on the map that the city sent out to us does not exist. They're saying that there is an alley that goes from Florence Avenue straight through to 73rd, and there's a T portion that goes directly behind our lot, which is lot 21. Lot 22 is the building that is right next to ours. The building originally went from, on lot 22, went all the way across from Florence through to 73rd. In our last riots, our last city riots, that building was burned down, leaving only one wall standing. At that time, they constructed another building and opened up the lot. And they constructed the building actually where lot 28 sits on the city map. And it goes from Figueroa down 73rd to what is lot 29, and that's where the actual opening is. If you look at all of the pictures, I've documented where the lots are and the demarcations and our entrance and exit. And we're just asking not to be landlocked by this one person who owns several lots around us and would like to have full ownership of that area. We understand the safety issue, but we need entrance and exit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So your concerns warrants further discussion. If I can have BOE return to the podium and ask if these concerns on the specific vacation before us has been resolved or not.
I would just want to clarify, first of all, that the alley shown on the exhibit is not the physical alley. It is merely the right-of-way that has been dedicated, and as I mentioned, it has been built over, which was the purpose of this vacation request, was to legalize the buildings that had been built over the public right-of-way years ago. And there is an existing alley that goes from the alley south of Florence to connect to 73rd Street, but the speakers are correct that it does not go all the way up to Florence Avenue. So I do have an aerial map that can sort of show the layout of.
Yeah, if you can bring that forward. And if you can address the circulation issues and concerns that during the testimony was raised. I understand that the report before us signifies no adverse impact on circulation in and around this vacation. Can you clarify on that?
Yes, that's correct. The access, we view that as no change in the status quo. I have not looked at the legality of the buildings that were built previously. However, we did not look at that in our analysis. So those issues that were raised, I would not be able to address that.
That was my next question. We colleagues have not heard anything from Council District 8 who is requesting this street vacation, nor we have not heard any objection from Councilmember Marquise Harris Dawson. Are you aware of any concerns from CD8?
From the council office, no, I'm not.
Or not? Let's, why don't we continue this for 30 days so we can get those who testified in front of the council office, because we have not, Dennis has not heard anything back from staff. So let's continue this for 30 days. There's no sense of urgency on this? There's not. Okay. So that'll be the order. And those who came to testify, thank you for your testimony. It's important that you connect with council office, Mr. Marquise Harris Dawson and his folks, so that we want to make sure your concerns are attended to. Okay. Okay. So with that, you guys are okay with that? I'm holding it back. Okay. Let's take items 6 and 7 together. This is two items that have come out in response to the Save Our Streets LA initiative that Mr. Englander and I put forward about a year and a half ago. And we thought in our city and finding every way we can to improve our infrastructure, specifically the streets, the DNFs, a third of our streets are in failed condition. Before we ask voters to look at outside funding, we need to clean up our own house first. And one of those main issues was looking at our asphalt plant. We found in the report that we were spending more money using other materials outside the city to fix our own streets, where we had an outdated asphalt plant, knowing that if we make the appropriate repairs, we can use our own materials at a cheaper rate, and that equals to fixing more streets in the city. So thank you for moving forward on that recommendation. I know the CAO played an instrumental role, as well as the Bureau of Engineering. So as if you can give us an overview of the scope of the project and its construction timeline moving forward. If I can ask the Bureau to report on that, and then I know we have a CAO. If you can give us an overview of the projected budget for this project, how it's financed, and how long it will take for the city to recoup this investment. Then I'll turn over my colleagues for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mahmoud Karimzadeh, Principal Architect with Bureau of Engineering. Good afternoon, everybody. As you know, the asphalt plant, one of the city, been there for many, many years, for decades. The last upgrade to the facility was in 1946 or 7. So it's about time to do something there in order not to make the site efficient, but also make the cities for much needed production of asphalt kind of free of the third-party market. So the scope of work in a nutshell includes the replacement and modernization of the entire facility. Basically, we are going to demolish the facility or deconstruct the metals and all the things that we can recycle, regrade the site, and basically build a state-of-the-art new technology asphalt plant, which uses the latest technology of ROM mix in order to produce asphalt plant. The buildings at the site will be renewed. There will be a new fence around the site. There is an energy efficient building on the site which is going to be LEED rated. Also, we are going to achieve Envision rating for the entire facility, which is for infrastructure project. The whole site will have a water management, so as the water going to dry creek around the site in order to collect the water, and also creating a well system that brings the water down 80 feet to 100 feet below the site, which is contaminated, in order to discharge the water and not let the contamination travel underneath the site. The scope of the project includes also the planting around the site and also a fence that will bring aesthetic back to the site. Now, in terms of the production, the existing facilities are bringing about 175,000 ton asphalt for the city. The new facility will be up to 700,000 tons.
Mr. Price?
I'm sorry?
What is the,
175,000 ton.
and it will go then to how much?
700,000 ton. So it will bring the city much needed asphalt in order to plan and run and program our asphalt needs in any fiscal year. The project started as a design build. However, for any design build, we need to have some type of drawings at the beginning. That's why we prepared 30% design documents. We call them bridging documents. We went to bid last year around November for the design build bid and award of the construction and design completion of the project. In March, early March, we have received bids, 3 bids, and we are ready to proceed. That's why we are here asking for the project budget approval from your committee in order to go to the council for the full approval and enter into the contract with construction.
Thank you so much for your presentation. One of the most startling findings in this audit that Comptroller Galperin led was that it cost the city nearly twice as much to produce asphalt at its own municipal plant than it would be to purchase the same quantity for outside vendors. And happy to see the CAO making the commitment moving forward to find ways to modernize and replace what we have today. So with that, I'll turn it over to the CAO. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee members. As Mahmoud mentioned, the overall project budget, or the estimate, based on the bids received as well as including contingency, is about $38 million. So in a prior year budget, adopted budget, Council and Mayor authorized $10 million in MICLA financing or funding to begin the project. And so our report before you today recommends an additional $28 million in MICLA, so a total of $38 million. In the fiscal impact statement, you'll see that the debt service for that is about $3 million a year for over 20 years. And so when you talk about recouping our investment, Mahmoud mentioned the current capacity of 175,000 tons of asphalt per year. So in order to get the total that we need in a given year for the area covered by Asphalt Plant 1, we have to utilize outside vendors. So that total cost compared with what the cost would be to produce that same amount of asphalt all in-house, we'd save about $8 million a year. So probably in about less than 10 years, we'd be able to recoup our investment for this $38 million project.
Exactly what we're looking for, efficiencies in city government, specifically as it relates to fixing our streets and improving our infrastructure. And notes comes at a $38 million cost, but well worth it in the long haul. So really appreciate your work. Colleagues, any questions? Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report. A couple of questions. So once the new plant is operational, will it produce 100% of the city's needed asphalt? Is the 700,000 tons enough for the entire city per year?
So Street Services is here as well, but based on my conversations with them and with the Bureau, there's 2 areas, Asphalt Plant 1 and Asphalt Plant 2. Asphalt Plant 1 requires about 600,000 tons of asphalt a year. So the 700,000 ton capacity at this plant would cover the needs for Asphalt Plant 1 and then a little bit more. Asphalt Plant 2, I might defer a little bit to Street Services to talk about that capacity.
Thank you. And the city has 2 asphalt plants, and this is rebuilding one of them?
That's correct, Council Member. Good afternoon, Keith Mosey with Street Services. Kind of piggybacking on what we're talking about, the true way to bring our costs down is through recycling. Every day the City of Los Angeles produces reclaimed asphalt pavements, RAP, from our city streets. This is one of the most durable, credible asphalt sources as far as for aggregates that we recycle and put back in all of our mixes. Asphalt Plant 1 will go from 20% recycling up to 50% recycling and produce a more durable asphalt pavement for city streets that will save us dollars not only now but in the future. The current capacity will go up to 400 tons per hour and will meet all of our needs, our production capacity needs for this entire metro region and portions of the valley as well.
Great, thanks, Keith. And so this will end the practice of purchasing it elsewhere.
Correct.
Okay.
I won't say it will end. Basically, we may have to use some material supplementally as needed based on our demand, but basically we'll be able to control our own destiny. We'll make 90%, if not more, of all of our asphalt, meeting all of our asphalt needs.
So those occasional purchases will be factored into the overall cost savings, which sounds like we'll make it up within 5 years once the plant is operational.
Correct.
Okay. And I think that answers all my questions right there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rue?
Can you break down the $8 million in cost savings one more time?
Yeah, sure. So without getting too much detail into the city cost to do the 175,000 tons right now is roughly about $65 per ton. Using outside vendors, they have an average range between $36 and $39 per ton. So if Asphalt Plant 1 area needs about 600,000 tons, it's a weighted average for that about $46 per ton when you factor in the 175 that the city's producing plus the 425 that you have to get from the outside vendors. So when you do that, 600,000 tons at $46 per ton, that's about $28 million in a year, compared with what the new asphalt plant is going to do at about $34 per ton, will be about $20 million.
So our asphalt plant is still going to be a little bit more expensive than buying from an outside vendor?
No, so the current or the new plant is projected to cost about $34 per ton.
Oh, 34.
Yeah.
Okay. One other quick question. In your report, you said that Asphalt Plant 1 says it's permitted to produce 584 tons per year. I mean, the current one, but its only production capacity is 175. So do you guys need to do a permit to go up to 700,000 or?
We are obtaining a permit to go up to 650,000 ton per year.
Okay.
Yes.
So, all right. Okay, great.
Mr. Price?
Yeah. Thanks for your report. It's exciting to see we're going to have greater control of our own destiny than before. Just curious, though, so how soon is the new plant projected to be in full operation? I mean, 5 years from now, 8 years from now?
The project hopefully goes to the construction by the end of this fiscal year. And in the beginning of the next fiscal year, we'll start completing the design documents and entering into construction activities. We are projecting that the project will be finished around summertime, or let's say August 2018. And then it takes us 3-4 months in order to commission the whole facilities. Bureau of Street Services need to work to receive from the manufacturer the instructions to run the facilities a little bit. So fully operational probably in December 2018.
And are there any elements or components of the cost of which we have no control? I mean, are there some variable materials? Been pretty steady over the years. You're talking about a $34 roughly per ton cost. That's assuming that all of the materials remain basically the same. Have there been any wild swings in the raw materials that we're using?
Well, I think that should be answered by the Bureau of Services.
You're correct as far as the market demand for oil, different things like that can change. Right now the price of oil has gone down, and so that does impact the price of oil, which does impact our production cost.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Good. Okay, do I have a motion to approve both reports, items 6 to 7 before us? Motion, a second. Mr. O'Farrell, thank you. So without objection, we will approve items 6 and 7, to send those reports to council for approval.
Thank you.
Amazing progress. Thank you so much. This is great for our city, and looking forward to more efforts in finding ways to build efficiencies as it relates to improving our infrastructure here in the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
I like that. That's right. Okay, item number. Oh, you're right, I do. So before we approve item 6 and 7, we do have a card on 7. Thank you for reminding me. Timothy Butcher, please come forward. Our very own. How are you, sir? How long have you been with the city?
17 years.
17 years. Thank you for your service.
17 years working at Asphalt Plant 1.
AP1.
Yes, sir.
All 17 years?
Yes, sir. I
Wow.
actually work in the transportation division for resurfacing. I haul the asphalt.
Yes.
One thing that I don't think was mentioned in here is the RAP, the recycled asphalt product that we take off the top of the street and recycle. One of the big improvements that will be in this new production facility is we'll be going from approximately 15 or 20% RAP usage up to 50%. That right there saves the material costs. I know these gentlemen have already hit very eloquently on the money savings. The main thing I guess I want to ask this committee, please, is to consider the workers, because we get so frustrated when we're trying to get a job done and the plant will slow down or break down, something will happen on it. I mean, it's going to be 70 years old, I think, next year. And I mean, I'm tired after 17 years. 70 years has got to be pretty tough on anything.
Sure.
But there's 3 watchwords that we have in the Bureau: quality, timeliness, and efficiency. And we've always maintained that quality. We take pride in that. It's craftsman's pride, if you will. The timeliness and the efficiency will be so greatly helped by having this state-of-the-art plant that will be able to give us the material that we need to get these streets paved, to get these neighborhoods looking better, to help with traffic, to help with quality of life, all those things. Those are important to us. And if you can hopefully help us to get this plant done so that we can get out there and do that, that'll
Sure.
really help us. And we'd really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your presence today. Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Please send everyone our best at the plant. Thanks for your work. Okay, so with that, no other speaker cards. Let's approve item 6 and 7 without objection. Send that to council. Okay. Item number 8.
Item 8, Bureau of Street Services report relative to conducting public hearings and requiring public notice for the proposed removal of trees protected by the LAMC pursuant to motion Bonin Buscaino.
Thank you. I do want to defer to Chad Molnar, who's the Chief of Staff of Mr. Bonin, the maker of this motion before us. I was pleased to second this motion in response to some of the concerns that City 11 residents, I know Mitch and Mr. O'Farrell's residents as well, have raised over the course of the last year or so on some of the issues as it relates to removal of protective trees in the city of Los Angeles. So, Chad, I'll just turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, council members. I'm here today on behalf of Councilmember Bonin to express his strong support for all 4 staff recommendations issued as part of the Bureau of Street Services report relative to protected tree removals on private property, and to urge you to approve those recommendations. These changes, which are requested pursuant to motion Bonin Buscaino before you today, are meant to add transparency and thorough public deliberation to the existing process for removing protected trees on private property. And I want to thank Urban Forestry and Bureau of Street Services, in particular Mr. Lawrenson, thank you, for its good work on this response to our motion. As you may know, this motion was the result of a tragic situation in which dozens of the oldest protected oak trees were removed as part of a development on a hillside neighborhood in our district, with insufficient notification to the surrounding neighbors. It exposed a weakness in our existing notification process, and local residents were understandably shocked and upset by the sudden and irreversible impact to the neighborhood's precious forest. They asked that we act quickly to ensure that such protected trees removals would be widely noticed in the future. So we worked with Urban Forestry on the 4 recommendations that you have before you today, and we believe that they will go a long way towards protecting our urban forests and ensuring a thorough public process for tree removals. We'll also continue to work with urban forestry to develop regulations to implement these changes. For example, we'll need to ensure that any posting at the subject property is close enough to the public right-of-way so that it is clearly visible from the public right-of-way. And posting on the actual trees to be removed could be a great tool for making sure that the right trees are actually removed, and that's actually been a problem. We'll also need to develop a process for providing written notification to property owners within a 500-foot radius that doesn't overburden the department. We can look to the existing process at Department of Planning for a model that works well, requiring applicants to provide sets of mailing labels for properties within a 500-foot radius of the site, as well as having applicants provide the radius map so that we know which properties are within that 500-foot of their site. We still have some work to do, but this action from you today will give us the necessary direction to get it done, and we thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Chad. With that, if I can call up Ron Lorenzen, Bureau of Street Services, to report to us on this item and share with us the recommendations from Street Services.
Good afternoon, council members. Ron Lorenzen, Assistant Director, Bureau of Street Services. Before I begin, we have two items on the agenda today regarding the urban forest. One is actually about protected trees. The other one is about street trees. But before I begin, I would like to introduce the Chief Forester of the City of Los Angeles. It is not me. It is Mr. Tim Tyson. Please come up here, Tim.
Tim, thanks for joining us again. Welcome.
This is Mr. Tim Tyson, and he has graciously accepted the position to be the Chief Forester for the City of Los Angeles. And just to give you a little bit of idea, Mr. Tyson has a background in the tree care profession that goes back somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 years now, just short of me. He actually started working with me some 39 or 40 years ago in the private sector. At any rate, Mr. Tyson will be the person to go for all council offices regarding tree issues, except for, including policies, but I will still stay in the policy realm because I have all of the background here at the city. So all of the operational abilities, many of the newer policy issues, they should go to Mr. Tyson and his staff. We know he's going to do a fantastic job, and I just wanted to introduce him to all of you.
That was delegation at its finest, Ron.
But anyhow.
Yeah, Ron, you seem so relieved.
Well, I'm not relieved, but I would like to sometime be able to retire. Sometime, okay? I would like to be able to. So I would like to, Mr. Tyson, to take the mantle now and then somewhere in the not too far future, take the entire responsibility upon himself. So anyway, I just wanted to introduce him.
We all look forward to working with you, Mr. Tyson, on this issue. Do you want to say a few words, sir?
Go right ahead, Tim.
I got a great mentor.
Okay, great.
Where do you come from? Or what's your background?
Yeah, tell us a little about yourself.
I was born and raised in a little town in Wayne, Ohio. And from there I came to California and I enlisted in the military at the age of 18. I got out of the service. I came back to California and I found a job to start climbing trees for $4 an hour. And that was 38 years ago. Hence, I spent 19 years or 18 and a half years in the private sector. And then I came to the city and I've been here 20 years now.
Great.
All trees. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, Ron, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Tyson. And thank you again, council members. The first item before us today is regarding protected trees. Real quickly, for those of you that may or may not know, the city has protected the oak tree species since 1982. That's when the original, what we called at that time, the Oak Tree Ordinance was enacted. And that, again, was in 1982. In 2006, with the help of the Community Forest Advisory Committee, as well as several other environmental people in the community, as well as those interested in this issue, working with the Urban Forestry Division, which at that time was still the Street Tree Division, we amended and revised the Oak Tree Ordinance to include several other species of trees. It's the entire oak genus. The genus is all oak species that you find growing in the Southern California area. We included at that time California sycamore, which I'll give you the botanical name because it's important. That's Platanus racemosa, and we have other types of platanus in this city that are not protected by this ordinance. The California bay, which is Umbellularia californica, and the Southern California black walnut tree, which is Juglans californica. Those three are species only, not the genus of those, not the Juglans Umbellularia or the Juglans genus. The Urban Forestry Division and then the Bureau of Street Services has realized for a long time that we have had some issues with notification. Just to give you an idea, one of the big problems is these trees are on private property. It's different than street trees, which we can actually post a physical notice on the trees, and all the public, not only the neighbors, but anybody who drives by can see this. So we realized for a long time that this is the case. These trees are protected by Section 46 of the LAMC. Protected trees also receive protection under Department of City Planning subdivision codes as well. We are to work together with the Planning Department regarding subdivisions and the trees, the protected trees on those projects under those provisions. I want to say something up front before we go on and talk about how we protect these trees. The law basically is trying to protect protected trees without precluding reasonable development. Herein, like many laws, is the rub. This is a very gray area and one that we take very seriously. But it is an important point of perspective, because when we look at why or why not we're going to recommend approval or denial of protected trees, it's one of the first things that we must consider when we make that consideration. As you know, protected trees are an integral part of the city's urban forest, and in fact, if we did not have human beings here, the only trees we would have in the Southern California areas are those species protected by this law. Nearly, I would say probably 90 to 95% of the urban forest, which is approximately 10 million trees in the city of Los Angeles, is human construct. So without humans being here, most of the trees you see would not be here, and the only trees that would be here would be the protected tree species, and herein why they're protected. Councilman Bonin obviously is very concerned about these trees, and because of the project that was alluded to by Mr. Molnar, we actually started to look at ways that we can improve the notification process. As Mr. Molnar indicated, there are several recommendations that we've brought forth. I will just quickly tell you the existing notifications that we have in place. Like with all street tree removals, protected tree removals are notified to the Community Forest Advisory Committee. An email is sent to the respective council district in which those protected tree removals will occur, and the Bureau's own tree removal notification system has the project posted. That is what exists today. The council office also asked that the board hear all these matters. Every single protected tree removal in the city of Los Angeles that is brought forth as an application is heard by the body who sits in this room. Unlike street trees, where two or less are not heard in this room, even one oak tree removal, one sycamore removal is heard by the Board of Public Works. So that's the existing conditions as we speak. Now, in working with the council office, we came up with these several recommendations that Mr. Molnar very quickly put forth to you. We will continue, we're directing us to continue the current posting requirements, which we will continue to do. We will continue to notify CFAC. We will continue to notify the notification system, the council district office, as well as, I'm repeating myself here, the notification system. I apologize for that. The second recommendation we have is to require the applicant to place postings, a physical posting, in front of the property the same way they are required to do by the Department of City Planning for an entitlement project. I did not put the details in the report. We are going to use the same process that the Department of City Planning uses as far as number per linear feet, the size of the sign, and what specifically has to be on that sign, that notice, although that will change slightly because the Board of Public Works will be the hearing body, not the Area Planning Commission or the City Planning Commission or something along those planning lines. The third recommendation is to have the applicants be required to provide written notification to the residents within a 500-foot radius. Again, we will use the Department of City Planning processes that they already have in place, and again, I do not have the details. I have read the details, but we will have to work those details out specifically for this issue if we move forward with these recommendations.
Ron, how is a 500 radius? How is that determined?
That's in the Department of City Planning notice requirements right now. They sometimes have 1,000-foot radii. We could certainly look at that. Our 1,000 feet is roughly what? It's just under a quarter of a mile, just less than a quarter of a mile. It's around a fifth of a mile. So that's something that we could discuss, but the point being is that we will determine a radii to have the applicant send out notices to them so that they can actively participate in the process. The last one, the number 4 recommendation, is to actually modify the existing tree removal notification system, which is old and it needs to be updated anyway. But what we are proposing here is to allow a resident to proactively place an address in the system that if any public hearings are coming up relative to that address, that they would automatically be notified. So it's a more proactive type of a system. It's not passive, requiring the resident to do anything except to place their wanting into the system so they can be notified of anything relative to that project. Again, we have directed those recommendations to the Bureau of Street Services. The first 2 are relatively straightforward. Number 1 is already in place, so we don't really have to do anything for that. Number 2 would require some work. We are estimating a 90 to 120-day window that we could actually have that system in place and operating. Recommendations 3 and 4 actually would take some more research into the specifics of how we would be able to do this and maybe even some programming, and certainly may require a restructuring of the fee policies we have relative to these trees, as well as perhaps even acquiring a few more staff people to be able to monitor those new practices. So with that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, any questions? Mr. O'Farrell?
Just a comment. I think this is a great motion, and also to daylight the fact that it's not just the trees themselves, but it's the urban wildlife that is harmed grievously when an old oak is suddenly torn down. It could be nesting season. There are protected species of birds as well, as per the Fish and Wildlife from the state. So I think any additional protection we can give. And a lot of, I think, private property owners don't realize what they have, the value that these old and protected trees add to their property. And I would encourage developments to incorporate existing tree canopy into designs whenever possible. And then lastly, just the fact that we have ever-increasing climate change, and how it's not just the street trees that can help combat the effects of the heat island sort of effect, but also private property owners can get in the game of helping to slow that down on private property. So I think this is a great plan, and I look forward to supporting this and moving it forward, and it's an educational opportunity as well.
Thank you.
Mr.
Rue?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. So this is going to apply for both public and private property trees, right?
I'm glad you brought that up, Council Member. The trees that we're referring, all street trees are protected. Those trees in the public right-of-way are already protected regardless of species. These are trees on private property. This law protects those species on private property.
I know you made it clear. I just wanted to double check. And it's for even one tree. It's not.
That is correct. One tree, one protected tree removal requires this board to hear that matter.
Now, how does an individual homeowner or anyone else, how do they know which species are protected? Is there somewhere they could go to find out, check their tree, or what kind of outreach are we doing?
That's another really good question. The Bureau of Street Services website and the Urban Forestry Division page in specific has information relative to these trees. One of the things that the next item and this item really begs for the city to do is to market these issues better. I don't know exactly right now how we can do that, but certainly maybe through public service messages and tools and processes like that, we could get the word out better so people could understand. Mm-hmm. But mostly these things happen relative to entitlement projects, building and safety permits. They work with us to try to get the word out to their applicants to make sure that that happens. I really don't think we have that much problem with with protected trees being removed when somebody has no idea. I'm sure it does happen occasionally. There's no way it could not happen because we don't have a proactive notification system. So to answer your question, I think maybe we just need to get more marketing out relative to this issue.
So currently on my private property, if I want to cut down a tree, I could do so.
You can remove any tree on private property that is not in this one genus and 3 species.
Right. So unless I knew that this one particular tree on my lot was one of these oak trees, then
You
I
are,
wouldn't. Yeah.
you are correct, yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Rue. Mr. Price.
You have a situation where we're fixing sidewalks now, as you may have heard. So what happens when you have a protected tree and a sidewalk that's almost at a 90-degree angle? Does the tree still sort of trump the sidewalk, or what's our position on those kinds of situations?
That's a great question, Councilman. These trees, these species on private property typically
I'm
aren't...
talking about public property. This is a public...
I'll get right there. Aren't coming in conflict with sidewalks, these trees on private property. All street trees, regardless of species, are protected because this body at this room has to approve their removal. Either that or the chief forester, which is the agent for this body. So to answer your question, which is a little off the protected tree issue, but every tree that we see out there, and if it is actually a protected species, let's say it's a giant coast live oak, it's impacting the sidewalk, we will, because of the fact that it's street tree and protected, we will probably go to extraordinary lengths to try to make sure that we can retain or preserve that tree if possible. If not, and still provide safe access for the sidewalk system, I would probably at this point say that the tree would be recommended for removal if that was the case. Does that answer your question?
It does. I just hope it solves the problem.
Mr. Rue.
I'm sorry, one more follow-up question. So, so are you guys working with Building and Safety and the Planning Department, assuming for a larger scale project development, if they apply for a permit or something like that where they're going to cut down trees, do you guys send somebody out to check? Or is it on the person who's building, is it on them to check the tree, or who checks the tree?
Councilman Rue, this is a great question. One of the areas in which we still at this city are lacking in some respects is that interaction between planning, building and safety, and the urban forestry division. To answer your question directly about whether or not urban forestry actually inspects, urban forestry at this time right now will actually go out when we receive a protected tree report and validate the protected tree report on the property. I must tell you though, we are not paid for that. The Urban Forestry Division has been doing that for a long time without being reimbursed. So it's one of those issues that we have to confront as we move forward. But as I said, one of the things that I'm going to be working on at my level in the next few years is to work with the Department of City Planning, the Department of Building and Safety, and the Bureau of Street Services to integrate us better so that we can work together as a team more. And if you read the laws, if you read Section 17, which is the subdivision part of the code, it actually says that they're supposed to consult with the chief forester on all of their entitlement projects. Now, it happens sometimes, but it doesn't happen all the time. So at my level, what I'm going to try to do is work with their management level in the next few years here to come up with a process that really works well.
Sure. Thank you. Any others? Okay, hearing none, I have 2 speaker cards if I can. Thank you so much, Ron. Appreciate you. Aaron Jimenez, please come forward, followed by Gideon Krakow.
Good afternoon. My name is Aaron Jimenez, and I'm here representing the Central City Association. We understand the intent of this motion is not to prevent development, but this motion would add a minimum of 30 days to the development process, which is concerning. Currently, the Council District and the Community Forest Advisory Committee are notified of protected tree removals, and it is posted on the Bureau of Street Services Tree Removal Notification System. Applicants are also subject to a Board of Public Works public hearing for any proposed protected tree removals. What about the current system is lacking? Are there a lot of cases of protected trees being removed without proper notification? CCA proposes to refine the current system instead of setting up a new process that would require additional city resources and burden development with duplicative hearing and noticing requirements. We don't believe enhancing this already multi-step process is necessary or the best use of scarce resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Gideon, welcome.
Welcome, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Gideon Krakow. Always a pleasure to be in this room, probably one of the most beautiful in the city. completely support all 4 of these recommendations. I want to thank the chair for being the seconder, certainly Council District 11 for all of their hard work, urban forestry, underfunded with a lot of responsibilities, and hoping that this and all the other things on trees that are coming before the city, including the Willits case, are going to strengthen that department. We got breaking news today about Mr. Tyson. Congratulations. It's a very important responsibility for our city. I've had the opportunity to work on tree items throughout our city, whether it was the Space Shuttle Endeavor project for 150 street trees in CDs 8 and 10, the Metro Crenshaw line, again in CD 8 and 10, the Sullivan Canyon project in CD 11 that was the impetus for this motion, the White Memorial project, 30-plus street trees in CD 14. These tree issues, protected or not, street trees affect the whole city. Perhaps no better example than the Willits settlement, which is going to deal with the sidewalks and a lot of street tree impacts. So why support this motion? Really 2 issues. The first is it's due process notification. The same reason you give notice to neighbors when there's a big grading project next door or a variance applies to trees. It affects people's property rights. In Sullivan Canyon, it was the project to remove 56 trees, and there was no notice provided to the neighbors. Well, if you have 56 protected trees removed next to your house, that affects your property rights, your due process rights, and that's why this kind of notification is required. Secondly, as indicated by CD 11, it leads to clear public input and decision making. At Sullivan Canyon, 56 trees, nobody knew about it. So there's a public hearing in this great room and nobody shows up. So what happens is when they go out to cut the trees, people start freaking out, hurts the developers. You want clear standards, that's good for everyone. So that's why we support all 4 of these recommendations, look forward to working and seeing them implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Always good seeing you, Gideon. Thanks for joining us. So with that, colleagues, any other comments? We're good? So we are all anxiously awaiting the State of the City Trees report, which is a following item, which I understand has these 4 recommendations in the State of the City Trees report. So knowing that, we will note and file. No, it's the other one you don't file. So you want to adopt the 4 recommendations. Oh. That's what I thought. So this is item 8 before us, right? So, okay, gotcha. We'll approve these recommendations. The 4 recommendations that were just presented. Thank you, and we have a motion and a second, and that will be the order. However, my understanding is these recommendations are in the report that you're going to present to us. No, separate.
They are separate. These need to be moved to council.
Separate, okay. So we have, will approve without objection item number 8, which entails the 4 recommendations presented to us. Thank you so much for your hard work. So with that, item number 9, which is the status of the city's urban forest and the state of the trees report. I just gave a copy to my dad. Dad, did you read the whole thing? You ready
Dad,
to present? Get Pops up there. So as you know, colleagues, we've heard loud and clear through our joint committees, Public Works and Budget and Finance committees, as we were preparing for the Comprehensive Sidewalk Repair Program. And during these hearings, a number of concerns were raised on the health of the city's urban forest. And we really got a sense of the value of our residents that place a value on the streets, trees, and desire for the city to safeguard this incredible asset. In the coming weeks, we'll be receiving several reports addressing a variety of issues related to street trees, including recommendations on how to mitigate tree removals during the sidewalk repair program. Do you want to recognize our Public Works Commission President, Kevin James, who's here? Thank you, sitting alongside Greg Good. Thank you so much for your commitment and leadership on this issue, you and your commission. With that, Ron, if you can give us an overall report on the report before us.
Again, good afternoon. Council members, Ron Lorenzen, Assistant Director of Bureau of Street Services. I can't tell you how much pleasure I have in being able to bring this forward to you today.
The first. of its kind, right?
That is, as far as I understand, it's the only, and I did a lot of research on this across the United States and the world. I could not find another city that has actually performed what I will call a snapshot in time assessment of their street tree population. I could not find one. But I would like to begin by thanking others that have worked on this. It wasn't just the Bureau of Street Services. I want to thank the Board of Public Works and President James and the Mayor's office who is here. Without their help, and especially Ms. Pope, who has worked diligently with me and several other people at the Bureau of Street Services to get this report to you today. That said, I'll give you a little bit of background. This report is strictly for that part of the population of the urban forest that resides in the public right-of-way. Those are the trees that we typically call street trees. It's not intended to address, nor does it address, the overall condition of all of the trees in the urban forest. And as I mentioned in the previous item, the canopy assessment that was performed by UC Davis back about 7 or 8 years ago now determined there are approximately 10 million trees in the urban forest, excluding the protected trees. So there are actually more than 10 million trees. Of those 10 million trees, this report addresses the approximate 700,000 street trees that exist in the public right-of-way. Typically, those trees are in parkways and in tree wells like you see downtown. That most of the trees downtown are in tree wells. In most of the residential parts of the city, they exist in open parkways. Open parkways are those planting strips that basically are a linear function in front of properties. And that is where the property owner has turf, typically turf, which we're trying to end as well. But your street trees are included in those. They're also existing in median islands, as well as in some grade separations around the city. And if you ever go to the east side of town and you go on Valley Boulevard, you'll see a grade separation where New Valley Boulevard is elevated above the streets down below, and you have grade separations where there may also be trees. You also have some very, very big project median islands like the famous Santa Monica Transportation Corridor project, adjacent to Sepulveda to Beverly Hills, that you also have these types of trees. When we started looking at developing this, like I said, we didn't really have a lot of basis from which to begin. So with our first big challenge was to determine the methodology and how we were actually going to determine the type of condition that the street tree population was in. At that point, I actually reached out to some other urban foresters around the country and floated several attributes, which I will call the attributes, that we used to identify a grade. We used a grading system, a simple grading system that everybody's familiar with, an A through F system, with A being the best and an F being failed. An A is excellent and F means exactly that. That's a failing grade. We, along the Bureau of Street Services, along with the help from these other foresters across the United States, determined 5 different attributes that we would use to begin assessing the population. Those are age diversity. That obviously means you want a street tree population that is varying in ages from new trees to young adults to mature to aging to older or failing trees, sometimes called in the arboricultural profession senescent trees. That means trees on the downhill side of their life. It doesn't mean they're going to die, it just means they're on the downhill side of their life. Species diversity. That means...
I'm sorry, before you go to species diversity, Ron, can you just kind of expand on why it's important to have tree age diversification?
I will get there.
Okay.
After I describe the attributes, I'll describe how we use this. The next would be species diversity. This means you want a broad-based species base. You want a lot of variation in your species of trees. And by the way, I'll say right now, the city of Los Angeles has the most varied street tree population in the United States by far, estimated at 900 species in street tree population. Some of those only have 1 or 2, but we have a huge, huge species diversity base. The third one, and it's not necessarily in order in the report, is what we call the tree stocking rate. The tree stocking rate is simply the available spaces that are planted. That's what that is. It's a percentage of the available spaces that are planted. The fourth was tree health. Tree health is obviously very important to assessing really the condition of the population. And the last was tree maintenance. Like I said, I floated this with several other urban foresters across the United States. And although it's not the only 5 attributes you could use, they all agreed that was 5 concrete attributes that could be utilized to do this. And we stopped at 5 because when you get too many attributes, we really can't, it's unwieldy and we really can't use it for an assessment. So we stopped at 5. As I mentioned, we used a grading system from A through F. And if you are looking at, or if you are reading the report, or if you look at the report, you will see the overall assessment condition right now is a C-. That's a compilation of all of the 5 attributes grades, and we graded them on an individual basis. Now, C- may seem like maybe not the greatest grade in the world, but I will tell you this. The urban forest, the street tree population in this city, in 2002, when we had a tremendous budget for tree maintenance, when we had a very large urban forestry division, we had, because maintenance is one of the big draws on the issue, we had perhaps a B+ condition in the urban forest. Now, a couple of issues which I will get to are dragging that grade down. But as we sit here right now, we have assessed a C-. Now,
What was the tree pruning cost then during that cycle?
Cost? Well, I
Every
can
year,
tell you
what
this. I'd have to go back and look. I
Okay,
can tell you
okay.
this. At that time, and I actually told this body about 18 months ago the same thing I'm going to tell you. In 2002, we had a just over 6-year tree pruning cycle in this city. We had 5 urban forestry division mechanized crews trimming approximately 45,000 trees annually, and we had a budget of just over $6.2 million that was trimming an additional, we trimmed about 120,000 trees that year. So 50, 70, about another 75,000 trees. Now, obviously, the prices were cheaper if we could trim 125,000 trees with $6.5 million. But I would have to look back and find that figure if you wanted that figure exactly. So at any rate, the age diversity in this city is fairly compacted. The reason for that is a very good chunk of these street trees were planted after the World War II building boom, during the World War II building boom, and after. That building boom, that's basically, if you're a boomer like me, that period of time, the people that were born then, that's where probably 50 to 60% of the trees in the urban forest were planted, the street tree population, during that short window between, say, 1948 to about 1965, but some people say 1970. So about a 20-year period, most of our trees were planted. So what we have is a street tree population that has a lot of trees in the 50 to 80-year range, which for street trees is actually getting up there in age. I'm not going to tell you that just because they're that age that they won't survive to live another 50 years. But for street trees, most cities experience that's getting up there in age, and they're starting to be on the downhill side of their ability to provide benefits to the city. Species diversity, as I already informed you, real quickly, you want no more than 10% of your species to be the same species, 20% of a genus, and 30% of a family. Our percentages are in there in detail, and I didn't memorize it, but we are well above those parameters. So our species diversity is an A. We have a great species diversity in this city. The tree health, when I started working on this, it was prior to a new pest that's confronting the city of Los Angeles, and that's the Xylella, sometimes called oleander scourge, that's actually attacking a lot of our larger species and older trees. When I started this, the tree health was actually probably a little bit better, but since this new pest has entered the realm of the street tree population, it is very rapidly spreading and creating a lot of downward pressure on the tree health attribute. As I said, the tree stocking rate is very good, about 88%. Although there are a lot of open locations still to plant street trees, the tree stocking rate's actually very good. It's a high B. So our tree stocking rate is a very good attribute. Now, tree maintenance. I don't need to tell everybody in this room that since the 08-09 financial crisis that we've struggled. But I will say this. I finally see light at the end of the tunnel, and I want to thank the mayor's office and council for finally realizing how important this is and significantly increasing the funding over the last 2 to 3 years. One of the things we're seeing also is that the contract prices are beginning to rise very rapidly. So although we're spending a lot more money, we're not getting quite the same amount of bang for our buck that we got 15 years ago. But that said, we are in a much better position today than we were even 18 months ago. We're going to be trimming somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 trees this year. It just depends on how the prices come in. If you do the math on that, you're looking at a 22, 23-year cycle for tree trimming. The BMP for trimming trees, the street tree population, is 5 to 7 years. That's the best management practice. Real quickly, why do we trim street trees? We trim street trees mainly for safety. And safety includes accessibility for the pedestrian and the vehicular public rights-of-way in this city. That's why we trim trees. We don't trim trees to reduce the amount of leaves that fall on people's property. We don't trim trees because we want them to look a certain way. We trim trees for safety and for public right-of-way accessibility. That's why we trim trees. Obviously, we are faced with some other challenges that are addressed in this report. One of those was already brought forth by Councilman Price, the sidewalk program. Actually, I think the sidewalk program will, although it has many challenges, will actually create a lot of opportunities. It just so happens that many of the largest species trees, particularly in the San Fernando Valley and in residential neighborhoods that are causing the sidewalk damage, also are susceptible to xylella, which means xylella is oleander scorch. That's a disease. That's the disease that's affecting American sweet gum, which you hear called liquid amber, magnolia, camphor, mulberry, except for the ficus, which actually is not, you're probably going to be surprised, is not the main contributor to sidewalk problems. In the San Fernando Valley, there are 45,000 American sweet gum, and almost every single one is causing sidewalk damage. They're all going to die sometime in the near future. The ones that survive will be very small in number. Councilperson Martinez has a lot of American sweet gums in her population. These are trees, though it's going to be a challenge, they're going to be dying anyway. So we have an opportunity to remove them in the program and to repair sidewalks. Councilman Krikorian actually has gone out with me personally, and we've gone out and walked, and he has seen this, and that's why in the sidewalk meetings much was said about these issues. So although there are many challenges in the population, the street tree population, there are many opportunities to leverage those things that are happening to the city right now to get this grade up and get it up quickly. But we have to understand that street tree sustainability is based on the same attributes that are in this report. We cannot have a sustainable street tree population in 5 years. We can't do that simply because of age diversity. That's impossible. We need a curve that basically looks like a bell sitting on its bottom with the top cut off, where most of our trees are in the 20 to 80% percentage realm, with the remaining trees, the younger trees and the dying trees on the outside edges, with most of them in that range of vitalness and vitality. So that's going to take time, but it's doable, and especially with the sidewalk program, a great opportunity to have a sustainable street tree population and
increase.
Well, yeah, but sustainable will mean an increase because the tree stocking rate will be up. So we'll have trees planted everywhere, but also a sustainable sidewalk system. It's doable. I'm here to tell you, don't let anybody tell us we can't do it. We can't do it overnight, but we can definitely do it. Anyway, I'm open to any questions you have about the report.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ron, for your report. Colleagues, any questions on the report? Mr. Price?
Thank you for the report. We certainly want to work with you as we improve the canopy, especially in some of our urban areas, some of our underserved urban areas. This weekend, for example, I had the pleasure of joining Public Works, City Plants, DWP, Conservation Corps, at Manual Arts. And we planted, I think, about 100 trees up and down Vermont. So it was really exciting. There were also some giveaways. We gave away fruit trees with the help of Public Works. The cuts were made, and so it was really exciting. And neighbors and businesses were coming out. They were excited to see these trees popping up, and some even promised to help encourage to maintain them. although we do have some sort of sources of doing that. So I just wanted to say I'm glad we're stepping up to the plate, especially in those areas that don't have the benefit of a tree canopy. And, it's almost like feast or famine. I've spent almost 6 figures in discretionary money trimming trees in certain areas where neighbors have just been complaining for years and years and years. And so either it's the canopy or it's the roots tearing up the sidewalks. We get it from both angles. So I'm glad that we have a more coordinated approach on this, and that we're really tracking what the state of our trees are. So keep up the good work. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is an unprecedented report. You're not going to find any other city in this country that has led in this effort, so really proud of our street services department. Thank you so much. Mr. O'Farrell? Oh, okay, go ahead.
If any individual, well, first, thank you for this report, and thank you for everything you do. And while we have a lot more trees that we want to trim in our district, I mean, you've done a considerable amount, and we're very appreciative. Right now, if an individual private owner wants to trim a tree, we currently provide free, the permits are free, right?
It is a no-fee permit, yes.
No fee. Now, what happens, and I know this is, especially Councilmember O'Farrell is working on this in his district as well as many other offices. What happens with, my question is regarding the illegal or unpermitted pruning of trees. More importantly, if someone, and I just did a walkthrough in Sherman Oaks, and there was some major illegal trimming going on because in one area, they just wanted their sign to show, their business sign. So there was some illegal pruning that happened. I think it might have killed the tree, but we don't know. But in any case, what mechanisms do we have to enforce these laws?
Real quickly, most of the illegal tree trimming that you see without a permit or with a permit, and either improper with a permit or illegal without a permit, occurs in, like you've indicated, business areas. That's the typical place that you see this. I don't know, I will be addressing, I'm sorry, the Bureau of Street Services will be addressing this specifically. And we actually were going to do that today. We are not going to address that with the motion that Councilman O'Farrell has brought forth. And I didn't memorize all those recommendations at this point, but as soon as we hear it, we will bring that forth and answer all of your questions relative to what's happening now and what we see as the future to being able to more proactively ensure that those things don't happen.
Can you briefly describe the current protocol or process for citing a person or company who's illegally trimmed a tree?
Okay. Right now, the only way that we can actually go after the person who violates, it's section 62-171, section 62-169 through 176. That is the part of the code that empowers actually the Board of Public Works to oversee these issues. Any violation of that, and permitting is one of those issues, can be prosecuted criminally. At this point, we have no administrative remedy that we can actually go in that allows us a little bit more latitude to actually go after these people besides criminal prosecution. So to do that, we have to have evidence. We have to know who did it. We have to have photographs. We have to have typically people willing to say that they saw those people there doing it, what it looked like before that was like that, so we have evidence that actually it happened. So what I'm telling you is that we don't have a lot of tools except that right now. And in all fairness to the city attorney's office, a lot of the reason it's been we are not investigators at the Bureau of Street Services for tree issues. We have investigators. So we are going to be working on that, which is getting us more power at the Urban Forestry Division in the future that actually gives us administrative abilities to be more proactive in prosecuting these issues, as well as making us public officers to be able to do that at Urban Forestry as opposed to just the Investigation and Enforcement Division, so that we can, like I said, more proactively move forward with these issues. So right now, if we just usually don't get the evidence to be able to even provide to the city attorney's office that they could actively prosecute. But if we have it, the city attorney's office is definitely on board with prosecuting if we have it.
Do you know, so when you did have the evidence, or when people reported in with all the appropriate information, and you submitted to the city attorney's office, do you know approximately how many we're looking at?
I would say that the problem's not with the city attorney's office, it's probably more with the Bureau
Yeah.
and not providing, not being able to obtain enough information to be able to prosecute it criminally. I know of a few, and I don't know the exact number, but just it's a handful over the last even 20 years.
But you are working on it now with the...
We are definitely working on a much more proactive, we're talking about including it in the alternative, the ACE program?
The ACE program, the Administrative Citation Program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, you know, I'd be fully in support and looking at the whole protocol, see what we could do to help support your department as well as the City Attorney's Department if necessary, and even looking at the whole fine structure, making it heavier penalties if necessary.
That's part of the recommendations.
So you have my support.
Thank you, Mr. Ryu. Any others? Mr. O'Farrell. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to, first of all, thank you for this first of its kind report. It's just terrific to see in print. And my first feeling is we can do better than a C- average here. Let's improve our grade point to at least 3.5. Let's get to an A- at least. And I know that will require funding. If we should strive to get to at least the O2 levels. You mentioned that the tree trimming cycle right now is at about 25 years.
It's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Somewhere in that
Yeah,
neighborhood.
depending on the prices for contracts.
We need to at least get it to between 5 and 10, closer to 5. And this is kind of, I talk about the disconnect sometimes about how we valued our urban forest. We value our tree canopy and the public rights of way emotionally and psychologically, but do we really value it in practicality? And we literally do not, because if we did, we would exhibit that value by investing in it more. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to really think long and hard about where we want to put our resources, about what do we really believe in terms of, and I'll say it again, climate change, because it's very real and it's affecting the quality of life in Los Angeles. So, I'll get off my soapbox there, but I think these reports are great, and we need to improve our tree maintenance. That's just clear. And our constituents can see it on the streets. I always love learning from you, Ron, every time you report, every time we talk, the term senescent. That's a new term for me. I love it. And that's the downward side of the tree's lifespan. And we have to really have a greater awareness of that so that we can start the replacement plan for these aging street trees. And I have a question for you. We just planted 170, 180 trees, mostly in the Glass Hill Park area, but into Atwater Village. And I want to thank the Board of Public Works for working with my office to make that happen. And these are root-friendly trees on the public right-of-way. But I've heard on more than one occasion from arborists that our tree wells aren't big enough. Would the Bureau of Street Trees agree with that we need to really think long and hard about enlarging the opening of our tree wells where possible?
Good question. Actually, the standard tree well size in the city of Los Angeles up until 2 to 3 years ago, I'd have to go back and look to see exactly when we changed it, was a 4 foot by 4 foot tree well. That was the standard tree well. The standard now is 4 by 6. Mm-hmm. Now, just to give you an idea, it doesn't sound like much, but it's the open space. 4 by 4 is 16 square feet of exposed soil. 4 by 6 is 24 square feet. That's like a 60% increase in size by increasing the lateral distance by only 2 feet. Mm-hmm. That specification, that standard detail, actually has several tree well sizes that can be applied, as well as the 4 by 6. Mm-hmm. Now, typically in most downtown areas, that's really all you can really get. But on projects on a case-by-case basis, we'll open it up to other sizes. To give you an idea, a 5 by 5 only gives you 1 more foot, but it sounds way bigger. But it only gives you 1 more foot than a 4 by 6, and not that takes away from the sidewalk, and that's usually the limiter is the width of sidewalk. That's typically the limiter. That's why the 4 foot dimension laterally, because most of our sidewalks are 8 or less feet. So that's why we have that 4 foot dimension. So to answer your question, we have the standard plans now for those, and it was already enlarged 2 years ago. So I think we're going down that path. So obviously we try to give trees the most space we can possibly give them on every project. That's what we're trying to achieve. Real quickly while I'm thinking about it, one of the things I didn't mention was performing a street tree inventory. That's one of the recommendations in this report, and along with, we're working with other organizations in the state and other quasi-governmental agencies to do an inventory of our trees now. We have an old inventory, and it does allow us to do some things, but we need to do a new one. So that's one of the things that was recommended. And costs are in there, and I didn't memorize all the costs. So you can see when the report was written, things are changing fast. So when the report was written, you can see the costs that we had estimated at that time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ron. And I look forward, I know that the chair will agendize fairly soon the forthcoming report on the whole penalty piece in terms of the illegal trimming or destruction of our street trees. So we look forward to seeing that report at some point fairly soon, too. And thanks for your work on that. And I think we're heading in the right direction, and I appreciate the work of you and your colleagues.
Bureau's pleasure.
Okay, Ms. Martinez.
I guess I'm more cynical about this than anything else, but I think we need to do, and congratulations on the new position, sir. You have quite the task. The biggest complaint from my office in terms of my staff is the response that they get from the Urban Forestry Division in terms of how they're communicating the fact that they're very limited in resources and what they can and cannot get to. But saying to my staff that there is really no point in us calling them isn't the right response. And so I think we need to fix the way the division communicates with council offices and also with the public. I cannot fault people for having to take matters into their own hands, especially if we're not responding to their tree trimming request. I feel that it's a sense of hypocrisy in our part to have to go after people who are just taking matters into their own hands because we cannot get to their request fast enough. So I think we really need to fix the perception of the division more than anything else. And realistically, how much can we allocate to restore this division, because we haven't done that in so many years. But I think the fact that we have very little confidence that we can get to these requests in a timely manner because you haven't been funded, and just the sarcasm needs to be addressed as well.
Duly noted, and a couple things that you brought up.
That's the only thing, every time we have a staff meeting, the one thing my staff continues to bring up is when we call the division, this is the response. You know, that's not, it's among city family, but how does the staff then communicate that to the resident or the business owner? We will not do that. It's not in our, certainly hope my staff never responds in that way, but I get the frustration. But with every report that we get before us, we need to be realistic in terms of what we're really going to be able to manage and fund, and how we're going to be able to change the perception, the public perception out there.
Okay, Council member, duly noted, and like I said, I hear two things, and if I'm wrong, you can just tell me. First of all, the actual attitude over at Urban Forestry, which the Bureau of Street Services Management can certainly address, and we will. The other issue is increasing staff so that we don't have to be always coming up with reasons why we can't do something, which is one of the keys here. And I know that there are most of the council and the mayor's office, I know both understand that. And we're looking forward to building up the Urban Forestry Division in the near future and into the future to be able to better address these issues. Because that's what we're lacking now. If we supply contract money is only that. It's grid fashion trimming. They can only do the trimming in that neighborhood, and the neighbors in that area are happy. But the other 97% of your population are not. And the Urban Forestry Division and its staff members allow us the flexibility to be able to address individual problems and to be much more mobile, for lack of a better word, to be able to address the issues as they come up. But again, back to your original point, I will not tolerate what you have told me, and we will definitely address that.
Thanks, Ray, for that. One last concern I had was ensuring that we have an inventory of street trees and their condition. Now, I understand the mayor's office is working with Caltech, and I know obviously we need to know where the problem lies before we start attacking it. Very similar to what we've done with our streets moving forward now with our sidewalks. Can you just give us a quick update on where we're at with creating an inventory of the streets that need to be addressed?
Well, you
Streets that need
alluded
be
to the Caltech inroad that we're making with the mayor's office. There are two types of inventory, or several types of inventory. There are different types of inventories that you could develop and perform to provide different information. To be able to provide all of the information that would really be necessary to be able to actively manage the resource may be somewhat more complicated than the inventory that we are working with Caltech that will be literally finding out how many street trees we have, the species of trees that we have, and some other relatively straightforward information like perhaps diameter of trunk, but not necessarily a condition assessment of each individual tree. Once we have that basis information, perhaps then as we go through inspection services with the sidewalk program, which is a great opportunity as well. We're going to have to inspect sidewalks anyway.
Right.
So while we're out there, we'll be inspecting trees as well. So we're trying to come up with a concurrent program that allows us to kill more than one bird. I mean, kill more than one bird with stones. So that's what we're trying to do, is to try to come up with a pathway that allows us to multitask and get these inventories in place so we can move forward.
Very good. I know in your report you have a series of recommendations that have already been in response to a number of council motions.
Correct.
So before we note and file your comprehensive report, I have one speaker card, and that's Art Sweatman to come forward, please. Thanks, Ron. You got the new Dodger hat on, huh,
I
Art?
got the spring training. Good afternoon.
What do you think of that new lid?
I like it.
It's a different D, huh?
It's for spring training. That's all it was.
It's spring training hat, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks
Good
for all your
afternoon.
hard work out there.
Thank you. My name's Art Sweatman. I am a tree surgeon with the Urban Forestry Division. I'm here to speak on behalf of the members of SEIU 721. First of all, I worked under Mr. Tyson for many years. He was my direct supervisor. He's a great teacher, and you won't find somebody more dedicated
That's great to hear.
to doing the job correct.
Good, that's great to hear.
But you know what? He needs help.
Yes.
And me speaking on behalf of the members, I need help too. Because, you know, we are overwhelmed with the public asking for service. Now, right now, we're pretty much just responding to emergencies. And, you know, we struggle at times, but we do a very good job considering our staffing levels. And it's not just our staffing levels. We're also, you know, really facing an equipment crisis. Our equipment's breaking down, it's getting older. So we're facing a whole lot of challenges. They're doing a great job, but we need more funding. We need to hire more people. We need to rebuild this division so that we can be at full strength again and we can do the job right. Now, right now, you know, we're trimming trees with contractors. That's not always such a good thing because it's really about transparency. And when you spend money on contractors, you're really missing a lot of the hidden costs. You've seen what's happened in the last few years where contractors just stop working in the middle of their contract and they say, hey, we want more money. We're not going to continue until we get more money out of you guys. And we can't do anything about it. We can't challenge it because it'll end up costing us more money anyways. So they get what they want. Contractors are also very limited in what they can do. You give them money to go out and trim trees. You give us the same money, you fund us, we're out trimming trees, we're doing tree removals, responding to emergencies, stump removals, you name it. We are flexible as a division and with our employees. So it's about transparency and it's about doing this job efficiently for the public. So please help us out. We've been here for so many years asking you to fund us. Please, let's make this happen.
Thank you, Art. Appreciate your hard work. Okay. In fact, Art, I'm going to come out and spend some time with you and your folks. We're going to work with Dennis to get that on calendar. I'm looking forward to getting out there with you. Okay, colleagues, any other questions, comments? This is our final item, item number 9. This is the item we note and file. And appreciate the hard work again by this amazing Bureau of Street Services. Thanks to Director Nazario, Mr. Cruz, Ron, Greg Spots, and our new Director of Urban Forestry. Thanks, Greg. Mr. Tyson. And of course, all of the men and women who serve the entire Bureau. We appreciate your hard work. With that, without objection, we'll note and file this item, and that is a final item. So with that, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.